So today it's gonna be a really interesting topic. We're gonna talk about the vulnerability and then how vulnerability management is important, and then we can use this because in cybersecurity, to be more proactive, to know what kind of problems we have, we need to understand, guys, what kind of vulnerabilities we have, and then how vulnerability management is in cybersecurity helps us a lot. Okay, today we're gonna talk about how we can implement vulnerability management, why it's important, what kind of organizations ask this vulnerability management, and then what is its main point. Before jumping to discussing what is a vulnerability and other stuff, what do you think? Let me know in the chat what kind of vulnerabilities you know so far. Let's create one thread in the chat, the vulnerabilities, let's say. And then here, please let me know what kind of vulnerabilities you know so far. Maybe you already kind of dictate them in hand. Let me know what kind of vulnerabilities we know, guys. So let's see. Brendan is saying human. Exactly. That's one case. Okay, we're gonna talk about the human vulnerabilities as well. Weak passwords, okay, policing, unpatched systems, exactly. Phishing, open ports, no security updates, very good. Software and firmware, exactly. Unpatched system, virus, phishing, very good, guys. So far we are good. We know what kind of vulnerabilities are exist. Actually, in the next slides, we're gonna talk about each of them. So no encryption, human error, very good. So then let's continue. Appreciate. Before switching to discussing vulnerabilities, each of them, let's consider actually vulnerabilities, what kind of vulnerabilities are exist, and then actually we are vulnerable today or not. Firstly, let's talk about the zero-day attack. Explain it here. We have zero-day vulnerabilities. What is a zero-day vulnerabilities? Anyone wants to give a guess? What is a zero-day vulnerability? Misconfiguration. You can continue in this thread. Day one release. Exactly, Brendan. So you mean that it's kind of fresh vulnerability? No one knows yet, specifically the developers or creators of this application, for example, unsecure design. Exactly. So what is a zero-day vulnerability and then zero-day attacks? Whenever we say zero-day vulnerability, guys, it means that in our system or application or organization, there is a vulnerability which is unknown to us, and that it is known to someone else, and then these people would like to take advantage of this vulnerability before any patch or fix is released. Okay, that's something unknown. There is no solution yet. Okay, very good. As the vendors doesn't know. Very good. So, and then how the vulnerability zero-day attacks happen. In this figure, it shows that security flow exists. Hacker knows about this vulnerability, and then it implements its technique. Unfortunately, is that, for example, cyber defenders, we don't know about this attack, and then it could happen. So then, why we are considering this sort of zero-day vulnerabilities, and then how we can avoid them in the future through proactive vulnerability management, through kind of continuous testing our environments, and then some sort of like get the idea what could happen. And then plus now in the later we're gonna talk about how we're gonna implement combine vulnerability management with threat intelligence as well. So yes, now let's define what is a vulnerability. With the vulnerability, that's a weak point in each system. It's known that in today's applications or any systems, there is nothing, guys, 100% secure. In a hacking, in an ethical hacking, kind of, it's always said that 99% it's always possible to find a way into systems, into applications through social engineering, human error, as you mentioned, or through some technical points, okay, technical flaws or weak points. So then, as you know, vulnerabilities are sort of everywhere, so they exist, and then how we can fight against them effectively through vulnerability management. This is a sort of technology, this sort of kind of term we use most often to fight against vulnerability management. And also during the CompTIA Security Plus exam, you're gonna see lots of these questions concerning with vulnerability management. They're gonna ask you what kind of practice security defenders should implement to avoid vulnerabilities, or to give the idea of the security posture of the organization. Okay, so that's a moment kind of you need to immediately think that, okay, vulnerability management is the one which we're gonna care about. So yeah, that's the definition of here what exactly zero-day vulnerability, and there is also interesting information about Zoom's dangerous zero-day. You can take a look on this. Now let's talk about the goal of the vulnerability management. The vulnerability management here, the key idea is to mitigate many vulnerabilities as possible. And it has, guys, systematic approach. Firstly, the vulnerability management, it identifies the possible vulnerabilities in a system. A system gives sort of ranking to each vulnerability, at what level they are serious for us. Okay, the third step, then we're gonna take action to remediate, to fix the problems based on our needs and preferences. Kind of, we think that lots of vulnerabilities, among them which are most kind of dangerous for us, or our security of our organization is concerned with. Okay, that's the goal of vulnerability management. It helps us to avoid the problems through systematic approach. So objectives of here vulnerability management, for what purposes we use in cybersecurity. Firstly, for improved security and control. It gives us to avoid, of course, future attacks. If we already identify some vulnerabilities, we apply the patch, and then the future attacks will not possible. Most of the time today, how attacks happen, guys, we have CVA. I'm going to talk about this a bit later. It means that there is an organization who is going to publish the existing vulnerabilities to current systems every day, or every hour. We can get some sort of vulnerability published. And then what is the problem? The problem is that most of the organizations, they do not track these vulnerabilities, and then they do not apply this patch. As a result, bad people, sort of attackers, they also track this vulnerability information because they are key information for them. And then they gonna see, for example, let's say today in Windows 11 2025, there is a vulnerability concerning with printing services. Let's say it's just released today. For the next month, most of the time, like 70 or 80% of the companies will not gonna patch this problem. Like, it's possible, it's a reality. What the attackers do, they try to do their best to take this advantage, this vulnerability earlier. Okay, they gonna kind of attack exactly the same vulnerability to their interested organizations. That's why, to avoid this sort of situations, we have vulnerability management, and then it provides us improved security and control. Another thing, it gives visibility in the reporting. For higher positioned managers, executives, it's important to see what's going on in the organization, and then how is the secure sort of security posture of the company. To provide this sort of information reports, we run the tests against our organization, and then we're gonna say, hey, look, we have this sort of vulnerabilities. For example, among them 5 are critical, 3 non-critical, medium. So it gives them the sort of idea how secure our organization, or what kind of actions they should take if the situation is too serious or dangerous in the organization. Okay, so that's also another key idea of vulnerability management, providing visibility and the reporting. Another, it's operational efficiencies. So as you know, if the problems are solved earlier, it avoids future problems. So it means that the attacks are solved or thwarted beforehand the attacker comes into our place. As a result, it helps to reduce the time, for example, to recover from any incidents. Okay, whenever the incident occurs, guys, it takes lots of resources, time, budget for the company. That's why proactive approach plays crucial role here to fight against these attacks. Okay, that's why it's always said that it's better proactive approach rather than reactive approach. Reactive, it means that when the attack comes to your organization, you're gonna react to this. The proactive, it means that in advance you try to secure your environment. Okay, most of the time it's highly recommended because it has very certain benefits. It's way better than the attack comes down and then launches its incident. Okay, these are the kind of three key terms of vulnerability management and then why we need it. We're gonna then switch and then see what kind of benefits they have. Another benefits that maintaining compliance requirements. So far, there are different organizations, and then, for example, each PIA and the PCI says payment card industry, they have their specified requirements for vulnerability management. These organizations require from each organization who is associated with their data or with their clients' information to follow certain requirements to be compliant with them. Okay, so for example, PCI says they require how many times a year or you should run vulnerability management. For example, there is an official page from the PCI says, as you see here in my, let me closer here, let me closer. Okay. As you see here, regularly test secured system in the process. That's the official document of PCI DSS. And then here it's stating that they should happen quarterly. The times of the security tests should happen for the organizations quarterly. Where is this information? Okay, implement security for the persons, maintain Control F, quarterly here. As you see, wireless access points on a quarterly basis, and then other, they gonna specify, for example, for each sort of security technology or security component of our organization, how often they should happen. PCI this states that at least it should happen quarterly. So then another case here, another benefit of the vulnerability management, it's gaining operational efficiencies, which talked about, yeah, and managing risks in the organization. Yeah, the key idea of the vulnerability management is to avoid the risks, the future risks in the organization, and then to implement the solution for them beforehand the attacker takes advantage of them. So then other benefits of implementing vulnerability management program include here automated scheduled scans. If we have vulnerability management in the organizations, we can automate the process. We can automate the scans. We're gonna schedule at specific time during a day and out of the office hours, let's say, just not to disturb the main network or function of a business. Okay, that's considered is a good practice. And then it provides robust reporting or business system prioritization. Here we're gonna kind of prioritize what kind of vulnerabilities actually we are into and we are mostly associated with to avoid them. Okay, that's why prioritization we're gonna talk a bit later also. And then proactive risk management, measures risk, and agile remediation. Agile remediation, it's agile kind of step-by-step approach we're gonna apply. Agile remediation, so that's the way how we're gonna apply here in the vulnerability management. Here, the question is asking the one of the objectives of vulnerability management. The answer is here. It's visible. Management includes increasing network size to improve data storage redundancy. Okay. That's a true or false. I think it's already mentioned. It's true. Let me sort of visible, please. Okay, very good. If Farah, you want to say something? Okay. Okay. So yeah, here we go. It's now fresh, guys. So let's take a look at this question. One of the objectives of vulnerability management includes increasing network size to improve data storage redundancy. We use vulnerability management for redundancy purposes or no? What do you think? Do we use, let's answer to this question. Do we use true or false? Thank you, Zainab. You can please answer to Zainab's thread. Appreciate. It's false, right? We do not use the vulnerability management for redundancy purposes. It's gonna be false. Okay, very good. Next answer in the same thread as well. One of the objectives of vulnerability management here, guys, is to improve operational efficiencies. True or not? For the second one. People are saying it's true, true, true. True, true, true. Very good. So I'm gonna choose a true. Here we go. Very good. Exactly. That's one of the key idea of vulnerability management to improve operational efficiencies. Okay, here we go. Now, common vulnerabilities. So I asked this question very at the beginning of the class. So what kind of vulnerabilities are existed? We have vulnerabilities in the source code, starting from like software engineering background, and then misconfigured system components. It's one of the very common like vulnerabilities among the, for example, admins today. And the trusted configurations, sometimes people and sometimes our configurations, as they blindly test, kind of trust each other, and then as a result it gives sort of lateral movement for attackers. And then we have weak credentialing practices, lack of strong encryption, insider threat, psychological vulnerability, which you define as a human error. And we also have inadequate authentication, injection flow, sensitive data exposure. Yes. And then now let's talk about each of them kind of specifically, because most of the time we have to face this problem is in today's world. Vulnerabilities in source code. What kind of problems we can expect? Developers today, they write their applications, but sometimes we see some attacks existed as a result of a bug or some insecurity features implemented by the developers, guys, in applications. Okay, so here it's saying that software might inadvertently transfer sensitive data. Sometimes developers, they use backdoors to access the application, to fix some problems, and also to implement some patch and fixes, right? And then they leave this backdoor kind of unattended, because it's kind of easier for them to access while the application is on the production environment. It's already used by the people. To avoid this problem, they access backdoors. But what is going to happen if the attacker finds out about this backdoor? Okay, that's for example, most of the time the vulnerability point by the developers. So it gives the full access, kind of admin access with full privileges to the remote attacker. That's why whenever we work, for example, in an organization, in my case, it happened that with software engineers. Whenever they access or open it, kind of privileged access to applications with as a backdoor to access them to fix problems, it should be practiced to immediately close this backdoors and then to remove these rights from these accounts, okay, to avoid future problems, because it's very common for this attack. So that's, for example, one case how vulnerabilities in source code can be problematic for us. So as a result, then they're gonna be problem for supply chain and affect enterprises. And then how we gonna fight against as a kind of defensive method, how we gonna fight against um, coding based problems we can run during testing and QA. QA, it means quality assurance. There is a specific kind of job or a job in IT department. Today, you will be responsible for analyzing any bugs or any problems concerning with the function or with the code of the application. As a quality assurance engineer, you're gonna be responsible for this. And then this person is gonna take care of the applications testing process and then analyze and then report us any problems in advance before we're gonna launch the application into the production environment, okay? In this process, we can implement dynamic test analyzing or static analysis. I think in the previous lectures, we talked about the static analysis that you're gonna do, review the code line by line manually. Dynamic analysis, it means you use some tools. For example, in GitHub, you're gonna apply different security checks and then they're gonna do it by themselves, okay? So they are practices which are used by QA people, quality assurance engineers. And also, plus we have misconfigured system components. So misconfigurations are another key hot problem of today's IT world, because whenever we see default configurations, as a cybersecurity professional, we need to change this. But however, it's most of the time it is the same as the default. For example, when we have a router, it's gonna be admin, right, as a password, and then it's gonna look like this. When it comes to the embedded systems or default technologies, we're gonna leave the default username and the password as it is, because normally people, they don't have to care about this. And then sometimes, unfortunately, it's gonna happen in a professional environment as well, okay? So that's why, to avoid this problem, is it should be the default configurations should be avoided, and then immediately the principle of security hardening should be applied, guys. And the plus here, what in the misconfigured system components in a Windows environment, if anyone has an experience with the Windows in Active Directory, that's one of the kind of honey sort of part of attacks, because most of the admins in Windows environment, they could neglect some Windows configurations in Active Directory, okay? And then sometimes it causes problems. For example, in Windows, this Active Directory is considered as the most kind of, from the attacker's point of view, it's the ideal place to start the attacking or to take to another level. From the defender's point of view, it's gonna be complex, because there are some errors, guys, in this environment by design. It means that Windows doesn't care about that when it created this sort of, for example, applications, okay? So that's why it's a bit complex here to think about how we're gonna apply the configuration changes sometimes in Active Directory, for example, in Windows. But at least there are some other solutions how we can do this, by applying sometimes compensating controllers in case the main one doesn't answer to us. And another type of common vulnerability, that's a trans configuration. What is a trans configurations? It means that one system or mounted hard disk here can read some data from another one, there is a trust layer between them. Like we have a friend, and then we can let this friend talk to our family easily because we trust them, okay? But sometimes it could happen in a way that the friend of us can act up, can act in an unexpected way. That's why we need to be careful regarding the trust configurations. So trust relationships may exist between here, specifically in Active Directories as well in Windows, because today's environment, in IT environment, Windows systems are consist of nearly 70 or 80% of the operating systems. That's why Active Directory are very common. And then the issues concerning these trust configurations are also connected with this operating system, okay? Then weak credentialing practices here, exactly like when it comes to safe passwords or creating the password places where you can store them. Sometimes it's called that you can store in the browser's manager, or as we talked in the previous lectures, you need to have a sort of dedicated password manager to use more kind of advanced passwords to avoid the easily breakable passwords, guys. That's why it's a good idea to apply these practices, and then to avoid weak based passwords. And also we have here a website to check your password. You just gonna visit there and see how strong is my password. For example, here you're gonna access, and then it's saying that, but you need to be careful because they are not tracking you, right? We need to make sure that they are not stealing our password. But it's saying that entries are 100% secure and not stored in any way shared with anyone, period. Okay, very, very trustable. And then let's see. For example, I'm gonna say, let's say if it actually works or not. 400 years. It would take a computer about 400 years to crack your password. You see, I just type it hello. If I just type hello, it says 9 milliseconds. But now I'm adding some special character. It's making 2 seconds. Now 8 hours. Wow. You see, now I'm gonna show my password, for example, hello Joe. Hello Joe. It's now 400 years. That's just, for example, a random password I just typed here. What is this? Let me show you here. What is it? Hello, Joe, for example, $01. If you, for example, use this password, it's saying that it can take how many times? It thinks 400 years. You see, that's why I try make it more complex, and maybe it's now a bit exaggerating. But it's highly advisable to use special characters more, and then to use the words doesn't have meaning. Most of the time we associated it with our names or pets or dogs or anything. If you speak two or more languages, combine them, it's gonna be more complex, because whenever the attacker uses against your password, they have, for example, if they're gonna do brute forcing, guys, they have already predefined word list, okay? This word list may consist of based on the language, like English or Russian or anything, any other. That's why if you're gonna mix them, it's gonna be way complex for them to crack your password. And another problem here, we have lack of strong encryption unencrypted. Exactly. Sometimes we have encryption, but we do not apply the encryption. It means that the data could be in a plain text. The key problem now, most of the time, we do not have, usually we do not encrypt USB sticks or laptops or portable hard drives. So we should start to apply these principles from now on. Now, let me ask you the question. How many of you among you actually use BitLocker or any hard drive encryption method for your machines, for your laptop or for your PC? Do you have anyone uses encryption, like for Windows BitLocker, for Linux system or for Mac others, we need to start. No, no, no. People are saying, okay, okay. BitLocker, Ahmed is saying, very good. Okay, Maya, Janab is saying, no, no. So now that it's a good time, guys, we need to start at least to give it a try. We need to use hard drive lockers encryption methods before you launch your system. It asks you to enter the password for your encryption for your encrypted device, okay, and after you give the password, it's going to open for you. Why it's important? Because in case your device is stolen or is lost, you're gonna make sure that it's gonna be harder for the attacker or for the safe to crack or to unlock our device, okay? Plus, we're gonna be make sure that our personal data are safe. That's why please give it a try. So Brain is saying give a hacker your password and they will eat for a day, but teach a hacker how to get all your passwords and they will eat for a lifetime. Exactly. Brilliant. I like it, Brain. Thank you. It's built for touch big small hard drive. Yes. Use a BitLocker can be hacked. BitLocker, as long as they use encryption methods, IS, or with a high private key, with a high number of keys, whenever you use the BitLocker, I think you can specify this. It's gonna be very harder to beat the BitLocker, but for now it's safe, Ahmed. BitLocker is safe as long as you use the right algorithm with the right size key of the encryption key. Okay. So another problem we have insider threat vulnerabilities, guys. Insider threat vulnerabilities, it means that in a company they have insider threats. They could be people, they could be kind of our employees in an organization. Sometimes they know a lot about the organization, and then sometimes life turns up to be different, and then they will take to revenge on us. That's why it's kind of important to delegate the security information between among the team members logically based on sort of security principles. Okay, so that's why it could be another problem here: threat vulnerable insider threat vulnerabilities and psychological vulnerability here. That's a human error, because as a human beings we are vulnerable for psychological here drivers. For example, the urge for self preservation or eagerness. It's very common that whenever asks a help or like require something in the urge, we want to help immediately. It happens in an automatic mode, but from now on we need to take a moment. Hey, kind of from the point of cybersecurity, is it something a good practice? Is it the person is a legit who is asking the help or who is asking the information? Okay, we know him, or at least we need to make sure to double check this. Okay, that's why the human errors, we have talked a lot about the previous lectures. They are the most kind of hot problems in cybersecurity because it's easily doable. Software here, social engineering, that's one of the key points. Like, we know how people are succeeded in this, like Kevin Mitnick or other social people. Whenever you read their history, how they like manipulated people, how they did their job just through the phone calls or phishing, that's gonna be like insane. So that's why we need to educate the people, and then we need to raise awareness to avoid this psychological vulnerability and inadequate authentication. We have here inadequate authentication. What does it mean? It means that we have authentication principles, but they are not good enough, okay, in today's world. Because for example, here is a good example. When you say forgot your password, some organizations asks you to write your to give answer to your security questions. Okay, what is your what is the place where you first attended to college, or what is your pet's name? So this sort of information, maybe it could be easily findable through social media. Some people, like post this information in Facebook, Instagram. The attacker can do this social engineering information, can gather this information, easily to answer your questions. Let's say that, for example, Kate here has account in Google, and then he has authentication method implemented by security questions. For example, he could choose the question, what is your pet's name, or what is the college you attended? The attacker, for example, take access to Kate's Facebook account, maybe he has or not, or some, like social posts, he can get the idea where he attended for the college, or pet's name, maybe, like he posts the social media post kinda, with my buddy today, like naming your pets. That's easily, kind of trackable information for this attacker people. He just presses in the place of Kate, and then says forgot password, answers the questions, and then, as you see, the account gets compromised. That's one of the kind of vulnerabilities. And then there is one example of this successful attack, guys. That's one of the very popular attack. Do you heard about Sarah Palin email hack from US presidential elections? It happened 2008. So how it happened, I think the high school guy, as you see here, Yahoo email got hacked. This guy accessed to the Sarah Palin's email, and then, like press it, forgot password. And then when it comes to answer the questions, security questions, he answered for the questions, what is the place I think she was born, or the first place where she met with the spouse, you see. And this guy is kind of, we couldn't call him sort of a serious attacker. It's just high school guy, could be script kiddie. He just gathered this information through available social media, publicly available through the internet, you see. That's one of the, for example, very popular case, how you need to be careful with your social media at the same time, and then to implement proper authentication methods to protect your accounts. So yes, that's one of the example. What do you think, to avoid this sort of forgot password cases? What kind of security principles we can implement now? Like now it's much better. We have different options. And then I think in the previous lectures we talked about this. What kind of principles we can implement, guys, towards this MFA? Very good. Peta, I like it. Omid, yes, exactly. Multi-factor authentication, we can use a hashing, exactly. Who uses two-factor authentication now for their accounts with Google or Google Authenticator? Who uses two-factor authentication? If you are not using, guys, please from now on give it a try. Go to your Google account and then make it available for two-factor authentication. Yes, multi-factor. Very good. Very good. So, okay, already we have people are getting secure. Very good. So yeah, that are the point of inadequate authentication. And then now we have also injection flows. Sometimes in application, in websites, guys, you can send some comments, you can send some data, and then web servers cannot, check this information correctly. Okay, they're gonna accept it. They think that they're good. They're coming from the trustable source. How you need to avoid this? We have problems with SQL injection. We have problems with the XML. The key point here to avoid this problem is implement input validation. Okay, each time we need to check that the input is coming in a way we expect. It's coming in a way that it's gonna work in our system. It's not gonna work in a way that a attacker wants to retrieve to obtain some information from us, okay? That's a point of injection flows here. And then sensitive data exposure, it's also very common. Sometimes we put our passwords in files, and then you know, like when it comes to storing your passwords, you put some information. In big organizations, you can put, you know, some secure, for example, bank accounts information in a text files, and then sensitive data exposure. If your device is accessible by other colleagues, if you are using shared folder, it means that the attacker could access this information as well. That's why, to avoid this data breach, we need to implement appropriate access controls for sensitive information which we have, okay? And then insufficient monitoring and logs. If you do not have proper security controls to track back the attacker, then it's a problem. You always, whatever we do in the network, it should have traces, okay? Actually, it has traces. And then when it comes to the logs, this is a way how we're gonna trace back. And then monitoring, we have SIEM kind of tools to visualize the logs to make our jobs as a defender easier, okay? They take the information from different logs, they combine, and then make some useful information for us. So then we have problems again with shared tenancy vulnerabilities. These sort of vulnerabilities are very common in the cloud. In the cloud, it means that we sometimes, if one tenant is compromised, they are connected with other tenants. It means organizations in a cloud, and then the same problems, the same vulnerability can apply to the rest of the cloud members. That's a problem. And then that's why we need to avoid. That's why we need to specify what is public in cloud, what is private for us, okay? So yeah, that's about common vulnerabilities. And now we're going to talk about the vulnerability management and patch management. That's one of the interesting things. What do you think? You think that patch management, vulnerability management is the same thing, or they are two different? Or they somehow overlap at some point? How is your thoughts? Let me say here, patch management different. Okay, if it's a different, give us sort of your kind of reason why you think different. Let me say it's a patch management versus vulnerability management. Okay, please answer in the thread. I would say patch management is a subheading. Brendan, exactly, very good. So, okay, overlapping, Pooja is saying. Okay, what about others? What do you think? Maybe overlap. Patch management comes under vulnerability management. Kiran, very good. Pranav saying maybe overlapped. Exactly. Exactly. Okay, overlaps. Very good. Yeah, that's a correct feeling regarding the patch management, guys, and regarding the vulnerability management. And then now let's talk specifically what they are and then how they differ in scope in their mission. Okay, so patch management here is saying that sometimes vulnerability management sometimes refer to the patch management, but there are differences. What is a patch management? Patch management, it means that if you have problem, like if you have vulnerabilities, we need to fix this problem. And then we need to apply the implementation of patches to the system, aiming we're gonna to address known vulnerabilities. That's a core aspect of actually vulnerability management as well. So then we're gonna see that vulnerability management is a bit bigger tree, and then patch management, it's one of the sort of subheading. It's one of the patch management is a way how we're gonna make the whole vulnerability management. They overlaps, and vulnerability management is in a bigger scale, and the patch management it's inside the vulnerability management. Okay, So vulnerability management here, it's more about ongoing process. It's a continuous way. And then vulnerability management, not only, guys, it does patch management, but also it works with mitigating vulnerabilities and then retrieving, taking the information from the threat agencies, threat intelligence. I mean, they get the new information, apply to the system, and then it makes checks again. It functions in a bit more advanced, higher level. Patch management is a part of the vulnerability management. Okay, so good. Can you think of the 3 reasons why patch management would be important? Yes, discussion question. It's a really good question. Can you think of 3 reasons why patch management would be important? Okay, what is the point of patch management and then why it's important? Let me see. Let me Control C. Let me pose this question here, and then let's see why it's not copy. Okay. Okay. Let me know why patch management important. Why important patch management? Okay. Please give at least one reason why you think that patch management is important for us. So it like holes, Brendan, very good. Close those gaps, fixing bugs, very good to patch known vulnerabilities, security hardening, system performance, very good. It closes penetration. It closes penetration. Yes. Kuja is saying to mitigate the risk. Very good. Ademir reduce the risk. Proactive risk management. Protect the system. Update. Very good. They are all key points why we need patch management and how it helps us. Very good. So far, very good. Thank you, guys. Now let's talk about the compromise components of support vulnerability management. Okay. To implement vulnerability management, what kind of components we need in organization and we need to have. In the previous lectures, we have talked about asset directory and inventory. It means that we need to know what kind of devices, what kind of assets we have in an organization. Okay, and then how it's important here in vulnerability management. Because whenever, guys, when we find the vulnerabilities, we need to know what kind of asset, carries more attention, more importance to us. Okay, that's why during this process, it's gonna be very effective and handy for us to know our environment, to know what kind of assets are important, and then how we can prioritize more effectively. So that's the point of here asset discovery and inventory. And plus, we need to know where they're located, how they are used, because before the attack comes, as a professional, we need to sort of a sense about our environment. And then we have vulnerability scanners. Wajiha, you asked the question, what kind of vulnerability scanners are actually available and then we can use? One of the popular vulnerability scanner, that's Nessus. It has, I think, open source version and the plus paid version as well, provide more information. That's one of the very good vulnerability scanner and then are used most of the organizations today. That's Nessus, okay? And I think we have OpenVS also. It's another VS Open. What was it? Vulnerability scanner. Open source. I think OpenVS it was. Let me check its name here. Yes, OpenVS. As you see, it's another vulnerability assessment tool. Here we have scanner, originally known as GNSS is a scanner component, so that's a super open source tool. We have now two options, for example. Now I think OpenVAS it's functioning more as an open source tool. We have Nessus and then we have OpenVAS. So then what kind of for vulnerability management then? Okay, the first thing we need to know is the discovery, inventory, and then we need to have vulnerability scanners, okay? They are components of vulnerability management, guys. Now these are the first two. For the third one, to have proper vulnerability management, we need to have patch management. As you see, management is inside vulnerability management. Patch management, it's gonna take care of applying the fixes, patches to the found vulnerabilities. That's its job. And then we have configuration management. Management, that's more automatic process. And then we have software here, security configuration management helps to ensure devices are configured securely. So we can automate this process, and then through these tools, it's gonna be easier to implement to avoid default configurations and then to implement security hardening, okay? Then we need to have CM, security incidents and event management. I think today in every organization, in blue teams, they use CM tools, different kind of Elastic or Splunk. What are the CM? They're gonna take the log information from different parts of the network. They're gonna gather together and then they're gonna represent to you in a very nice graphical visualized way to see what is happening in your network. We're gonna use them for incident response. We're gonna use them for threat intelligence, many more. And then we have penetration testing as well. Sometimes vulnerability management, guys, consists of penetration testing. Later, we're gonna talk about the penetration testing versus vulnerability management, okay? And the plus threat intelligence. Why threat intelligence? Threat intelligence, it's a more proactive approach. As a vulnerability scanner, as a vulnerability scanners run, they should know what is going on, what is on the trend today, what kind of new vulnerabilities are exist. We're gonna take the feeds from threat intelligence, we implement this into vulnerability scanners, and then we're gonna run vulnerability scanners against our organizations. That's the way how we're gonna be on the same page with the attacker, okay? Sometimes beforehand, immediately by fixing the problems using threat intelligence. Now, before we're gonna take the break, guys, let's answer to this question, okay? So, patch management involves implementing patches to address known vulnerabilities. True or false? What do you think? Patch management involves implementing patches. Okay, question one. People are saying questions for designer. Thank you. True, 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 true. Okay, people are saying it's true. Let me choose the true. Exactly. Patchman implements patch to address vulnerabilities. Very good. Very good. Now, second question. Vulnerability management is a one-time process of discovering and mitigating vulnerabilities. Do you think that it's a one-time process or no? True or false? For the question second, guys. False, false, false. People are saying exactly. Very good job. So yes, vulnerability management, it should be continuous, okay? We should run this over the time constantly. Very good so far. Now I think Gracia, let's take a 10-minute break. And then we're gonna continue from the next slide, which is gonna be about vulnerability scanning and versus pen testing. Yes. Let me stop share here. Sure. Vulnerability management. There we go. So now we're gonna talk about the vulnerability management life cycle. Before continuing this part, we are all good with the initial part, right? What is vulnerability management? What are the its important components? So we got the idea, right? Do we have any questions? Does anyone have? Please confirm it's just. Oh yeah. to practice with let me share this with you just a second. Yeah, you can use this tools to practice maybe to get some hands-on experience with vulnerability scanner. Give it a try for try hack me or vulnerable hack. Oh, we have a winner. Second number. Okay, duck winner. Okay. Okay. So far so good, right? So far so good. Any questions? We are on the same page, right, guys? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Luis, for confirming. If we're all good, I'm gonna continue then. Okay, okay, appreciate. Thank you, guys. So then, okay, vulnerability management life cycle. How it's gonna happen in what order? So this diagram it's showing firstly we're gonna discover priorities assets, prioritize asset, and assess, report, remediate, verify. Phase one, we're gonna do discovery. That's the moment that we're gonna identify what kind of vulnerabilities exist in short. Second phase, it's a prioritization of assets. Okay, we have different lots of vulnerabilities, guys. What is the take action plan for us? We need to know what is important, what is not important. Okay, during this time, our asset inventory, it's going to help us to identify key critical assets in our organization. That's why it's very common to have lots of vulnerabilities. Among them, we're going to prioritize which one we need to do first. That's a phase, second phase. Third, that's an assessment, okay? And then it's more connected with prioritization. And then now we need to understand how it's critical, vulnerabilities, threat levels. If we're gonna allow this vulnerability not to be patched, what is gonna happen in the worst case scenario? So that's the way how we're gonna make sort of hypothesis, think, ask questions from ourselves, and then that's the way we're gonna do assessment. Then we're gonna report, we're gonna communicate with executives or higher managers to apply the changes, because sometimes fixing critical vulnerabilities, they're gonna cost the budget, they may interrupt business continuity. That's why we need to be on the same page with the executives also. Okay, then remediation phase. After we're gonna report, after we're gonna tell anyone, after we got the report, guys, kind of approve it. Now it's time for remediation. We know that which vulnerabilities are most pressing for us, and then we're gonna apply fix. It's a last stage. We see the fixed problems, they do not cause other vulnerabilities or other problems in an organization or in a system, and then we still keep going our monitoring. Okay, so yeah, that's a life cycle how vulnerability management works. Now let's switch to vulnerability scanning. Okay, vulnerability scanning, how it's gonna happen. Firstly, it's a discovery part. We're gonna run our vulnerability scanners. Okay, we need to find that vulnerabilities. How do the vulnerability scanners, guys, work? It's a background. Actually, they have sort of kind of already predefined tests, okay, for specific vulnerabilities. They know vulnerability scanners, they know what to check. That's why whenever we run them in our organizations, they're gonna check each part of our organization's network system to find anything which seems vulnerable for us. Okay, and then we need to understand how many frequency types we should have. They are important to have internal or external vulnerability scanning. Internal gives us the point how the system looks like from inside. Okay, like as you know, we have insider threats also, and then we need also external. We need to run external vulnerability scanner from the point of the attacker. What could be, can be achieved whenever we run vulnerability scanners. Actually, not only blue team people and the defending people, they're gonna run vulnerability scanners, guys. Sometimes attackers, but most of the time attackers also use this vulnerability scanners and then this report information from the vulnerabilities management report, because they are kind of valuable information to help the attackers to know where the problem, where they can give a focus to exploit. Okay, so this inspection includes, okay, like the scanning, they're gonna check website applications, network port scans, internal server, as you see, IoT devices, and cloud services. How are we gonna maximize efficiency here? We need to ask the questions from ourselves during the scanning. What is the data classification, stored, processed, transmitted by the system, or is the system exposed to the internet or other public networks? Because we need to know that if it's exposed to the public, then we're gonna run the scan as external, because we need to know how attacker can get, what kind of information the attacker can get. Okay, and then based on the results, we're gonna act properly on this manner. So this has the questions, and then admins and vulnerability tools here. Here we have different configurations for vulnerability scanning. We have admins who is gonna be responsible for performing vulnerability management process, because not only every individual in a company can do this. Why? The big reason is that vulnerability management consists of very useful information and then critical information concerning organization. Okay, if the information report is accessed by malicious people, they're gonna bring serious harm for our organization. That's why here we need to take care of who is gonna do the vulnerability management. And then regarding the scan sensitivity levels, what does it mean? It means that we can run sensitivity level in a different modes. They can be very harsh to our system. It means that they check every part of the organization, and sometimes they cause business continuity problems. Okay, they cause some issues for organizations. That's why we need to prioritize kind of at what time we can run what kind of with what kind of scan sensitivity levels. And the plus here we have supplemental network scanners specifying the type of scan are running, what type of network scan is running from. So sometimes it's gonna be helpful for us, kind of it's for network scans, or it's for offline sometimes, or it could be from the external side. That's the way how the whenever we do vulnerability scanning, we need to consider this sort of information. So next here, now time for vulnerability scan and versus penetration testing. Before jumping to this discussion, let's hear what are our initial feelings regarding this vulnerability management versus pen testing. Okay, what do you think? VM, I'm gonna say versus penetration testing. Okay, let me know what are your initial thoughts, kind of feeling is, how they could be different. Are they different or the same? Anything comes to your mind, just let me know. Just let's see, what do you think? Vulnerability management, vulnerability scan actually versus penetration testing. Yes, in this thread. What do you think? Vulnerability scan versus pen testing. They could be different or they are the same. Okay, only thing is same. Okay, you could be right. Peter Bonig using penetration is more hands-on. Very good. Vulnerability scan only discovers vulnerability and uncovers weakness. Okay, in your system, but the penetration test discovers weaknesses and then attempts to exploit them. Very beautiful, Quabian. I like it. That's what it is. Now we're gonna talk. Yeah, I'm scanning. Brendan is saying PT is proactive and checking yes. Okay, we're just almost same. I think they're all sick. Okay, very good. Scan is to find vulnerabilities and testing is finding solutions. Okay, VM is scanning for vulnerabilities. Very good, very good. Appreciate all for your answers. Yeah, mostly your answers are correct. You're right, like on defining your answers why you think so, because sometimes before doing the pen testing, we need to run the vulnerability scan. What is now, what kind of things we have, right, as a vulnerable. Very good. And then now let's talk about how they are different. Actually, they are different, guys, in a scope and then in their goal. Okay. So how they could be different? Klabina, I think he very beautifully explained that vulnerability scanning, we just gonna run them to see what kind of vulnerabilities we have. It provides organizations, guys, with here comprehensive overview of their security posture. But vulnerability scanning, it just, like sees what kind of vulnerabilities we have. It doesn't go to the next step, which is to exploit them. It means that what is a real attacker can do with these vulnerabilities. That's the next level, which is going to be done by penetration testing. You see, penetration testing takes a further step to exploit these vulnerabilities. That's where the difference lays. Okay, vulnerability scanning, it just finds us common vulnerabilities in our organization. Penetration testing, okay, he says, like, you have these vulnerabilities, let me exploit them, let me take the role of the attacker. How's he gonna do this? So yeah, that's a sort of main difference between vulnerability scanning and penetration testing, guys. Here it's defined here how vulnerability scanning is gonna help, and penetration testing, it's more proactive. And then people are saying also hands-on approach. Why we're gonna call them as a hands-on approach? Because when it comes to the exploit, it means that you need to be very good at technical skills to exploit these vulnerabilities. Okay, you need to use different tools and then to exploit this vulnerability and then to get what you want as an attacker. So yeah, that's a penetration testing. And penetration testing here, it evaluates the presence of vulnerabilities and then organization's ability to detect and respond to security incidents effectively. Why most of the companies, they hire penetration testers actually is a written, we have kind of job roles as a penetration tester. The organizations want to see how they are resistant, how they are kind of well protected against future problems, attacks. Penetration testers, they're gonna help us as an ethical hackers to protect our organization better by simulating real attacks. Okay. So yes, sometimes we penetration testers, we're gonna call them ethical hackers as well. Okay, but whenever you do the penetration testing, guys, you need to be very careful because you need to have sort of different procedure for penetration testing, and also you need to kind of be obliged to follow the principal rules because you are identifying the vulnerabilities of the organization. So you should never think of using it for your personal advantage. Okay, there are ethical, right? There are ethical principles of being penetration tester as well. So yeah, now that's a clear difference between vulnerability scan versus penetration testing. In a short, vulnerability scan just scans a list of vulnerabilities, finds vulnerabilities. A penetration testing takes a further step to exploit them. So we're gonna move next to explaining that in detail. And now let's talk about what is gonna happen if these two beautiful cybersecurity techniques are combined together, right? Vulnerability assessment with penetration testing. Today, in practice, we see this wrapped, like they are used as a combined together. Vulnerabilities, they're gonna show us what are the problems. Penetration testing comes to fix this problem before the attacker takes advantage of them. That's a very proactive approach in cyber defense for us. So combining vulnerability assessment and penetration testing here, please be familiar with this term. VAPT stands for vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. It's a best practice when we combine them together. So combining vulnerability assessment and penetration testing, it has several benefits. The first benefit, it is comprehensive view of security posture. Yeah, it is indeed comprehensive. It gives you detailed information running vulnerability scan and plus by doing pen testing. And the faster mean time to remediation. What does it mean? Mean time to remediation, we're going to calculate our the efficiency of our blue team sometimes, how they are good at responding to certain attacks, okay, during the incident response. So that's why whenever we combine this vulnerability scanning with penetration testing, they're going to help us to process better to fix the remediation, okay? Then we have reduced risk across IT infrastructure, of course. Why? Because vulnerability scanning shows us the problems, penetration testing, just solving all the problems, kind of fixing them by exploiting them, by showing us how the attacker could exploit them. Then streamline patch management process. As a part of vulnerability management, we're gonna run patch management as well to fix the vulnerabilities. That's the way how patch management is crucial, and then how it's important as a part of vulnerability management. So then that's why please remember this information. VAPT, combination of vulnerability assessment and plus penetration testing. So far, so good. What are the key points in order to become a pen tester? Say that it's asking the question. Zainab, thank you for answering. There are several roadmaps becoming pen tester. Exactly. So to become the pen tester, exactly, the domain is very wide. Say that you need to know kind of specifically what kind of domain you are mostly interested in. Okay. So then based on this domain, you're gonna start to build your own technical skills, because when it comes to the pen tester, it's more associated guys with hands-on experience and then technical experiences. And then you're gonna say, let's say that you wanna be for a pen tester for networks, okay? For network, to be network pen tester, what kind of tools you should know, what kind of, for example, theoretical knowledge you should have to understand overall topology of the network, okay? And then you need to know what kind of, for example, technologies or tools are using in these organizations, because you are the one who is gonna depict the problems, okay? That's why being a pen tester, sometimes it's being an attacker. You are the attacker, but with morals. You have the morality based on good ethical principles. The key point to be a pen tester is more than technical knowledge, guys, is to have proper ethical ability, okay? You need to approach to this process ethically, because sometimes you're gonna find the problems which is gonna seem for you very luxurious, okay, kind of very profitable, but you need to put your job at the first point, and then you're gonna follow the principles. So that's why to be a good pen tester, that's being ethical, good morality, and then to have technical knowledge for specific domain. That's gonna make you ideal candidate, I think. So types of scanning. Today we're gonna talk about active and passive scanning. Okay, I think we have talked about when it comes to the information gathering also before. For example, as a pen tester, whenever you work, for example, whenever you initiate your process to investigate regarding your victim, you're gonna do scanning as also. What does it mean in this case with vulnerability scanning, passive and active scanning? Passive scanning here with the vulnerability management, it means that You do not interact with the victim or the system more often to disrupt some problems. In active scanning, you identify here open services, check for possible vulnerabilities. It's gonna more kinda you automatically interact with the system, okay, with the network. In passive scanning, you just take a look, being a bit away from the network. You see, you just passively scan the network traffic is the kind of ideas and then see what's happening. So then we have credentialed and then non-credentialed scanning. Credentialed scanning, it means that you're gonna run the scanning with credentials, like with privileges as an admin, or to test for system application, specifically for this part of the network. Non-credential scanning, it means that you're gonna just run from the point of the network perspective. It means that you do not have, for example, admin credentials to apply the vulnerability scanning. You pretend to be external, let's say in this case, and then you run this sort of vulnerability scanning. The question is asking, vulnerability scanning involves attempting to exploit identified vulnerabilities. Very good question. What do you say, true or false? Vulnerability scanning involves attempting to exploit identified vulnerabilities. False, true, question is true, Mary, thank you. It's gonna coming as a false, right? Very good, very good. It's false. Because that's the job of the pen testing. Let's check. Very good. Then please answer to this thread for question 2. For question 2, guys, here it's gonna be penetration testing simulates real-world cyber attacks to evaluate the effectiveness of cybersecurity defense. You're saying this true or false? You're saying it is. Let me check. True, 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 true. Yes, all people are saying true. And then it's gonna be true. Exactly. Pen testing is taking real world scenario. It's more hands-on experience. Here we go. True. Okay. Okay. So far so good. We know what is active in the passive scanning. We know what is credentialed, non-credentialed. First so good. Next. Thank you, guys. How frequent should be scanning be? Okay. Okay. Now, this is a really good question, but it really depends on different factors for organization. Okay, how often we should scan it. For example, in the initial part of the session, I showed you that it depends on the compliance requirements. Sometimes PCI DSS, they stated that to be compliant with PCI DSS, you have to run quarterly, at least vulnerability scanners, right? That's why I think it should be weekly. It can be weekly or daily. So it depends on risk appetite, because the vulnerabilities are very how to say, common today to come up every day, every hour it could be. That's why you need to keep an eye on them, and then to your system by running vulnerability scans. I think in most of the organizations, they're gonna do vulnerability scans weekly or every 3 day, kinda after 3 days. So, but it still depends on what your organization wants. Here they are saying risk appetite refers to the organization's willingness, and then regulatory requirements we need to know, like a PCID says, and then technical or business constraints. Yeah, that's a very critical point here. Okay, you want to be secure, you want to apply the vulnerability scanning, let's say every day, but your systems, your hardware, your servers are responsible, kind of are capable of doing this, right? Whenever you run vulnerability scanning, guys, it's gonna be very resource intensive. It causes problems. That's why most of the time we're gonna run vulnerability scanning out of the business hours. Okay, it's very common. That's why during the, for example, CompTIA Plus exam, they're gonna ask you to avoid business like interruptions. What is the ideal time maybe to run the vulnerability scanning, or how the manager should manage the vulnerability scanning at what times. Okay, that's why we should know that vulnerability scanning, they are resource intensive because they are checking each part of our system, and then our system is responding to this requests while they are also responding to their main goals. Okay, so it's kind of extra headache for them. And business constraints, yeah, sometimes businesses, they're gonna limit. That's why, you know, like, to avoid the vulnerability scanners, that's why you have to do it only out of the business hours. And the licensing limitations, yes, to be licensed, they're gonna say define total usable bandwidth here, or number of scans can be conducted. They're gonna tell specifically how many scans you can do for a week or for a day. So that's about scan frequency. Now we're gonna go move to next, and the vulnerability assessment. Okay, vulnerability assessment. Vulnerability assessments are periodic reviews here. And here, how we gonna do? Vulnerability assessment, what kind of information actually they gonna give us, guys? They're gonna give the vulnerability name here, overall severity, detailed description, suggested corrective activity and reference to relate to the problem, to the vulnerability, with what technology it's associated with, what protocol, or maybe, and the risk information. This is a brief information which we can find in each vulnerability report form. Okay, and then we have vulnerability prioritization. Okay, what is prioritization? We need to prioritize certain vulnerabilities, because whenever you run vulnerability scans, they're gonna give you lots of vulnerabilities, and then fixing all of them, it's very hard for organizations. Okay, so that's why you need to know what is important, which one you need to select as a kind of high priority, as a critical for you. Then you're gonna choose the criticality of system and information affected by the vulnerability. You need to know, for example, let's say that we have a vulnerability concerning our banking services. Like, if we do not fix this, the clients, for example, access to our system will be interrupted. Then that's our priority. We need to give a fix. If they have, you know, problem, vulnerability with our backup system, let's say kind of there is a possible way to access our backup systems, it could be as a medium or low level comparing to other problems. Yes, it's still critical, but, you know, comparing to other ones, we need to sort of prioritize which one should require our immediate attention, our immediate response to this. Okay, then difficulty of fixing the problem, it's also important, because fixing the one vulnerability, the vulnerability could be by design. It means sometimes you have to change the whole system or other connected services. That's why you need to estimate how much is a vulnerability could cost you. Sometimes it's possible, guys, you cannot, even if the vulnerability is high, is very critical, you cannot kind of fix this because of its connected issues with other systems. Okay, it's gonna cost you lots of money. In this case, how you could do? What do you think? If the vulnerability is still high, but we do not kind of fix the problem, because if we want to fix the problem, it's gonna cause big problems for the rest of our network, let's say. In this case, what we can do? Let's think about this. Let's brainstorm. In this case, this scenario is very plausible. It's very common. In this case, what do you think? How we can act? Like, vulnerability is critical. We want to fix this, but it costs us much money and problems with the rest of the network. In this case, what we could do? Is it all such an open source capable of active scanning versus passive scanning, credential scanning versus network? Yes, yes, John. Thank you guys for answering. Yes, it's capable. And then let me answer to my question. Do you get the idea? like vulnerability. Let me write the question, kind of brainstorming. Let me answer here. I want to hear your answer. Brainstorming here, answer in the chat. Like vulnerability is high. We want to fix this, but our organization cannot allow, our system cannot allow this because of because it may cause a problem for the rest of the network. In this case, what we could do, guys? What do you think? Do we can implement other things, or do we have to accept the vulnerability? What could be some of your initial thoughts? Just try to respond whatever comes to your mind. What do you think? Do you think it's challenging? Like we have silence here. More safeguards for unpatched vulnerable system. Okay. Jignesh is saying more safeguards. That's good. More safeguards. You're relating to some very good answer. Now I'm gonna say redundancies, backup systems, and do the patch. Okay, they know vulnerability category by prioritization, so we have to prioritize vulnerability. Exactly. But what I'm saying, the vulnerability is, guys, high, is critical. We need to fix this. But if we're gonna to fix this problem, the solution is gonna cause the rest problems with the network. In this case, what we can do? This is damage would be if not resolved. PETA, very good, very good. Pranav, either isolate the system or network or accepted. Pranav, very good. Martin, compensating controls. Exactly. That's what we need to do. Now we're going to talk about it later. That's why I wanted to ask you in advance. In this case, guys, sometimes it's very common. I like each of your answer. Very good. Very good job, guys. So when it comes to the patching and the user privileges, yes, Kate, patching and user privileges, we need to be careful with them as well. To be about the vulnerability and choose a lower input vulnerability. Exactly. So the idea is that whenever we have critical vulnerability, but we cannot fix this because the network, the rest of the network cannot allow this. What we can do, we're gonna come with another kind of second way of security principles, which is compensating controls. Okay, we see that zero problem exists. In case the main one, stops to function, we have compensating control. If this vulnerability is exploited, we need to sort of have backup, kind of safeguards here or compensating control to take care of this vulnerability. In this case, this could be an option for us. So yeah, and now let's go to one of the interesting topics about CVE and the CVSS. You're gonna hear about these two terms very often during contest SEC Plus exam, but please try to remember them and then understand them. Okay, what is a CVA? That's a common vulnerabilities and exposure, which is commonly known as CVA. In short, what is a CVA? CVA, that's a definition of each vulnerability. Guys, in our industry today, each vulnerability comes with its own unique CVAs, okay? And then we can find each CVA by their year, date, and the month information. As you see here, vulnerability DT CVA, what year it is, and then it's sort of like ID number, okay? And in today's professional world, whenever we talk with our colleagues or about any vulnerabilities, there are lots of different vulnerabilities. That's why we're gonna communicate by their CVA. That's why please understand what is a CVA. CVA, that's a unique name of each vulnerability, and that it consists of very useful information. As you see here, one of the example here, vulnerability details in CVA 2023 regarding with the Zoom product test. And then they're gonna give what kind of products are affected, references, and then score information and others. So another key term after CVA, we have CVSS. What is this? That's Common Vulnerability Scoring System. If CVA, it suggests defines the vulnerability and then its unique name, case with some details. CVSS, it gives us the scoring. Why we need scoring for vulnerability? Because we are seeing that we need to prioritize the vulnerabilities, okay? That's why we need to know at what level they are dangerous or critical for us, okay? CVSS comes with three types of vulnerability, which is low, medium, and high. And then they have specific score, guys. We have score starting from 0 till 9 till 10, okay? From 0 till 3.9, if we have such score for vulnerability, we're gonna call them low vulnerabilities, okay? If they have medium, it means that starting from 4 till 6.9. 6 point above 7 and until 10, until 8.9, it's gonna be high. And then we have critical as well. It's gonna be 9 comparing to 10. Actually, we have two ratings between CVSS. We have CVSS version 2 and version 3. Sorry for the confusion that for the version 2 we have 3. For the CVSS version 3 we have 4 severity levels, okay? But today most of the organizations already most vulnerabilities we see that from the vulnerability scanners they're gonna give the report with CVSS version 3, but sometimes with version 2 also, okay? So yeah, CVSS version 3 for severity level 0 3.9 low, medium 4 6.9, 7 8.9 it's a high, and critical 9 10. This National Vulnerability Database, that's guys, US government repository of standard-based vulnerabilities management data. Okay, sometimes there was a kind of news that the government could stop this organization, but hopefully they get contract for the next year. So that's kind of a really good organization which is going to take care of all this process information concerning with vulnerabilities, okay? Nestus NVD, you can visit in their site and see. And here I think we have questions coming from say how can we determine the score of vulnerabilities, like by what tools? Whenever you run whenever you have the vulnerability, most of the time say that it comes with its tools. Whenever you run OpenVAS or Nessus tools, they're gonna give this vulnerability report with their scores, okay? So this is if here, as you see, by NIST official organization, it's provided the version 3 score distribution, number of vulnerabilities. That's organization, guys, which is gonna take care of all these vulnerabilities information, okay? As you see that throughout whole the organization, like industry, how many vulnerabilities of we have critical, high, medium, low, CVSS score report, you see National Vulnerability Database. That's organization, and then that's a place which most of the time we're gonna locate this vulnerability informations. Okay, so now okay, did you know that CVSS 4 is out? Okay, as you see here, CVSS 4 even is out. Okay, cracking the code, CVSS 4 is coming. Now the version 3 is on the YouTube. Yeah, give a try to read this blog. It may be helpful. So yeah, so far so good. We talked about the CVA. We understand what it is. We understand the CVSS. They are key fundamental knowledge, guys, you should know for the exam. Okay, overall to be the to be the professional, they are kind of everyday used terms for us. Then next we're gonna move for the vulnerabilities remediation. Vulnerability remediation process determines in the addresses weaknesses. Okay, remediation process, how it's gonna work, and then what is the way we're gonna do the remediation. We identify the vulnerability, we assess them, we prioritize them, and then now time for their remediation. Okay, remediation, they're gonna be by patch management, fixing the vulnerabilities, and we're gonna have here, as you see, two options for remediation. Most of the time, it cannot be possible to implement all security solutions for each vulnerability. That's why we have to choose compensating control. What is compensating control? This mechanism, this technology in cybersecurity helps us to address this vulnerability without remediating the underlying issue. You see, the issue still exists, but still we kind of covered another security layer to make it harder for the attacker to exploit this, or at least to provide the same level of security. But there are some nuances regarding this, because when it comes to the compliance requirements, they require to be compliant, you need to have compensating control, which is gonna give the same power strength as the main security control. Okay, so that's why it's gonna be a bit complex then in the big organizations to make a decision on this. That's why sometimes we may face such decision or cases. Another option beside this compensating control, we have decide as risk is acceptable. It means that we have to accept the risk. It means that risk accepting, we just gonna say, okay, we don't have nothing, we're gonna accept the risk. No, it's gonna come as a result of careful thought analysis. Okay, that we're gonna judge, we're gonna see what kind of options we have, we're gonna see what kind of damage in the worst case scenario could happen in our organization, and then we're gonna bring the decision. We are not the only one who is gonna bring decision. We're gonna talk with the executives, we're gonna talk with our managers, and then as a team together, as we see there is nothing kind of critical threat to the organization, and then we're gonna say, okay, here we go, we can just, you know, close the eye for this vulnerability. But most of the times they could be low level, medium level for us. Yes. So far, yes, that's about how we're gonna deal with remediation. And then the remediation, it's not always possible, guys. And then now let's go to the, I think, conclusion. So we discussed today about this vulnerability management, how it functions, what kind of components it has, its difference versus patch management, its difference versus penetration testing, and plus we discussed its life cycle, and then overall the importance of the vulnerability management for us as a security defender. And also we need to know how it's important from the point of the attacker, because the attackers also uses this. And then that's why to be in one step beforehand them in advance, we need to have proper defense environment, and vulnerability management is one of the key item in our list. Okay, so far I think that's all about this today's lecture. I'm open for any questions. Do you have any questions? And then we're gonna answer to your questions if you have, and then we're gonna do Kahoot. Farah, what do you think? So far, all